I've always sort of heard outside about Warrington Works, big place, and all I know, it was along the Stratford Road, was a large, a high red wall, and that was behind there was Warrington Works. Well, similar to London, you know, you go behind that red wall is Wormwood Scrubs. You never see it, you never go in there, you know, unless you work there.
The very nature of the place, and it's a dirty damn place at the best of times, and there's nothing worse than you walk in, and even on a summer's day, you're probably a bit warm, and doesn't matter what you touch, it's dirty, dusty, and all that sort of thing. And day after day, you get fed up of it. I mean, if you're working on bogies, or in my case, wheels, then, when all's said and done, there are things that have been travelling on a coach where effluent of the toilets and that slosh past the things and all. It's there, whatever you like to say.
It was 5,000. We made everything really at Wolverton. We had our own, we used to make all the mattresses for the sleeping cars at Wolverton. We had our own iron foundry, we had our own brass foundry, a smithy as good as anywhere on the system that supplied springs for the bogies, and so it goes on. You know, it's incredible that it's been condensed, if that's the word, down to the size it is, and it will be condensed even further.
It was like a family business, really. If your father worked in there, or you'd got a relative that worked in there, then the chances are you'd work in there. And if your family had got a good name, then you went into Warrington Works. Years ago, if you didn't have a relative that worked in the Warrington Works, then you had an awful difficult task in trying to get a job. In fact, in a majority of the cases, you never ever did get a job.
By painting, it may seem to you that a painter is a painter and you can slap a piece of paint on a coach anywhere. But no, you see some of the finishes on those Royal trains, and the painter, the old painter, was an artist, there's no doubt about it. You can see your face in some of those. And it was only the application. So if somebody in their wisdom was saying, oh, it's costing too much to paint a vehicle, we'll go to Italy and we'll look at a spray booth. A mobile one. Ran along the side of the coach. Great, there's a coach, 11 minutes. Wonderful. No one told them that it took them 3 days to master the rest of the coach up. So at the end of the day, they got a spray booth, which was completely useless. If they'd have had a man in a wheelbarrow and pushed him down the side of the coach with a spray gun in his hand, it'd have done it just as quick.
Any craftsman worth his salt, it doesn't matter what job he tackles or what job he does, he likes to stand back and say, well, look, I don't care who looks at that, I'm proud to say that I done it. That's my work, full stop. That's something that is dying, I must admit that. I've got to admit it is dying. A lot of the young ones, they don't seem to have the pride in the work now that they used to have years ago. The tradesman years ago, somebody that could make a cabinet and inlay it with veneers and things like that by hand, and you know, absolutely fabulous, fantastic. But at today's prices, you could never afford to employ a man because the actual component or the article would be, the cost would be astronomical today because of the man hours that were put in. But years ago, that was secondary. But it's not today, and I think that is basically the difference between the old craftsman and the new.
When I was in the fitting shop on the drilling gang, just down from us was the millwrights. They were at the bottom, and one of their turners worked an old belt-driven lathe that used to rattle. You could hardly hear yourself talk. The gears used to make that much racket, and he used to turn up machine parts for the millwrights on that. Never ever used anything like a micrometer, always used calipers. Used to put them on a rule, tap them up, or put them on the old piece if he was making a new piece up from a broken spindle or something. And he used to work to a set of calipers, and the machine was that old that you wouldn't have thought that anyone could have possibly done anything with it. And he was absolutely a master craftsman. And when he went, of course, the first thing they did was to take his old machine out and put a new one in. But he never did while he was there, and he used to turn out the most marvellous work on it.
Well, in the early days, the lifting shop, we all dreaded to be sent to the lifting shop, and it was a dirty shop. The body was lifted off, and the bogies were lifted by crane straight into this old caustic soda bosh, and steam and stuff all went up in the shop. And you had bogie cleaners up the ramp. They were cleaning, there were dust flying. And up the top end, when the bogies were complete, the old blackers up, they blacked the bogies, and that was dripping all over the shop. And of course, you worked in pits, and they were full of dust. Very dirty shop. When I worked up there, I wore an old pair of denims that, well, when you took them off, they stood up on their own nearly.
Warburton Works was known throughout the whole of the railway as the class works of the railway. We were the premier people on the railways, much to the, what can we say, annoyance of Swindon and Derby and places like that, but we got the tradesmen there. Reason being, we was a one industry town, and all the best boys used to come. Derby, they used to go, according to the money, who went up and down 5 bob, they go across the road to Rolls Royce and move about. In Warburton Works, they were static. I mean, there must be thousands of people that spend 50 years of working life in Warburton Works.
We'd got a certain pride at Wolverton, we'd got a certain tradition at Wolverton that, you know, we were the quality works, and we even today turn around and say that, you know, we are the works. If there's anything difficult to tackle, or it's a one-off job, or anything like that now, they'd say, oh, send it to Wolverton. Wolverton will do it. And if Wolverton can't do it, then the chances are it can't be done.
This is all I know is sewing. It's like most of these women in here have been dressmakers and come in here as qualified dressmakers, even though they've been doing this type of work. Where me, I've just done this, and this is it. This is my training. And then I think I know this inside out. I know practically everything in here. Not a lot I don't know what to do with. I like my job. I enjoy my job. I should hate to ever have to go from it.
When you leave school, you would like to do something. Everybody's taste differs, doesn't it? Some people like sugar in the tea, some don't. Some people like working with wood, some don't. Some people like working with metals, some don't, and so on. That's how the skills are arrived at, because you like doing that job. You like to make metal do something. You like to be able to hit a piece of metal with a hammer and make that metal do what you want it to do. These are the old skills that are dying out fast. Pick up a piece of metal and look at it, and you want to make it change its shape. You hit it with one of your hammers. We've got various types of hammers, and you can make that metal change its shape with your own skill, with the skill of your fingers and your brain power, you know. But you can't get computers to do that. You can't get robots to do that.
I can quite vividly remember Whilst we were in the training school, as a matter of fact, it was during the beaching era, really, at that time, and the chief training officer gathering all the boys together within the school and saying that Mr. Beeching had been very kind to Wolverton, in so much as that although Wolverton was to cease new build as such, Wolverton was going to be converted into the biggest carriage repairs depot in Europe.
Great gloom and despondency descended on everybody, but it may well have been the salvation of Wolverton Works, because it took on a repair role, and it subsequently, of course, fewer and fewer new carriages have been required, but those that are in service have needed to be maintained, and it could well have been that decision to take away the new build from Wolverton was Wolverton's salvation of it down the years.
If you was to build a coffee table, you've created something. But if someone was to give you a coffee table and say, I want 4 new legs on it, there isn't the same thought about making new legs as what there is making a new coach or a new coffee table. And that's more or less what happened with the old type tradesmen. They couldn't come down to repairing something. They could create something, but they couldn't repair something. And that's where, when you hear say there's a lot of pride lost, there was a lot of pride in building the coaches. And you see some of the royal coaches that were built at Wolverton. You can understand the pride in them now. But when you've got a dirty old brake van in and someone tells you to put 2 new panels on the side, there can't be the pride in that of what there was building a new coach.
I see it as a challenge. If you get a smashed vehicle down to the frame and you've got to rebuild it, to me it's more of a challenge to do that, because you've got to get your profile back your way rather than have stuff milled out for you and just assemble it. So to me it's more interesting this.
Wood is like nothing else. It's the most natural thing that there is. It has to be treated with respect. No matter what machine you put it through, it can still pull a funny thing on you. It can still have its own way with it. So you treat it with respect, just like you would any other living thing, because wood never dies. It's there all the time. The only time wood dies is when it's burnt.
When you physically think of the weight and the size of a vehicle, and when you consider that when you built it it's worth £500,000, I think there's a certain amount of pride in that type of work then. And when you've got to conform to all the statutes that are required, because it's a public transport vehicle, it's going to carry passengers and all that, everything's got to be really spot on. Well, it's like ship workers then. When they built a ship, you know, they were really proud on the day it was launched. And I think you'll find traditionally that railway workers feel that way.
I would say 60% of the old railmen, when they travelled on the railway and they stood at a station, in fact I still do it now, if a train pulls up on the opposite platform, you're walking along, looking at the compressors, looking at the date when it was built, where it was built. You knew by looking on the end of the coaches where the codings, on the codings where they were built, when they came in for lifting. Yeah, you felt proud. I see, railmen years ago were somebody. They were proud to go inside those gates. They were railmen. It was a, you know, what kiddie didn't look at an engine going by? I mean, I've got grandchildren now, and they always ask me to take them down to the railway line to see the trains go by. You feel proud to belong to such a great industry, and it's only, I feel, that governments, I don't say government, governments' interference with the railway industry has caused the problems we've got now.
This place was known right throughout the width and breadth of this country, and even on the continent, as the most work efficient railway shop in the country. It turned out the best, and when I say the best, I mean the best. It could turn out anything. If they wanted it, they got it. The craftsmanship was here, and over the last 10 years, 8 years, it's going. It's a great, sad thing.
At the end of the day, when the chips are down, people don't look on Wolverton Works as the end of the rainbow, like they used to 20 years ago. I think people can take it, and the present climate are even making people even more aware that in 6 months' time someone could make a decision and say you're out of a job, and this is a guiding factor now throughout the works. You used to go into the works at one time and you got a job for life. No one's interested in going into the works now because in 5 months' time they could be out of a job. So no longer is it a recognised or an established employer.
When I leave here, which is going to come, and I say that with a very sorry heart, it chokes me sometimes, because I know that once I walk out of them gates, I shall never ever have that same feeling for my work as I've had working for BREL and BR, because of the actual personal achievements which they allow you to have to extend your craft to, you know, within reason, health and safety. And you pass this on to the younger men, they don't realise what you've actually gone through to get to that standard. They abuse it. Because you make it look easy, they think it's easy themselves. And it's not easy. It's not easy to achieve something. You've got to work at it. You've got to look after it. You've got to do something. You've got to make it personally yours. It's something that it's inside you. If you don't do the job properly, you go home disgruntled. If you do it properly, you can go home and you can sleep soundly.